So, Pastor Corliss, he's the guy that yesterday put his little brochure on the picket fence and walked home sad. He then went to Adelaide. Has anyone been to Adelaide? Yeah, Adelaide's a nice place, isn't it? We like Adelaide. Well, he stopped in Ballarat on the way, and he did some programs in Ballarat. And if you've ever been to Ballarat, then you'd keep going to Adelaide as well. So, on he went to Adelaide, and he went to the town hall in Norwood. And we've got a picture there of the town hall in Norwood. And go backwards, Brad. You can see the town hall up behind the little tram there, and the town hall's still there in Norwood if ever you go to Norwood. And he preached in the town hall, and do you think people came? Not really. And sometimes when you're doing programs, and I know that Pastor Webster is a very good evangelist, but sometimes you think, where are all the people? And you get to start the program and you go, where are they? Well, that's how Mr. Corliss was feeling, and he thought, oh no, we've spent all this money on this hall, and hardly anyone's come along. But one lady came along, and she was a midwife. A midwife helps ladies when they have their babies. And she was looking after a lady called Mrs. Julia Steed. Now, the Steeds, and if we can go back to the other picture, Brad, I'll just go back on this one. If we can go back to that one. Down the front corner here is a shop called Steed & Sons Painting and Decorating. And at Steed & Sons Painting and Decorating, they had a family business that was doing very well, that looked after people's houses. And Joseph Steed and Julia Steed, they worked in that business. Now, Julia Steed was going to have a baby, but the midwife who had been to that program, she invited Julia. She said, they're going to run this program again in a tent. And you should come and listen to what this man's saying. And so Julia Steed turned up, Joseph Steed turned up, and they went and listened to the tent in Stepney, if anyone knows Adelaide. And they listened to all kinds of exciting things. And Joseph Steed, he actually wrote in a little diary. He said, my heart was quickened. That means I was a bit excited as I learned all these amazing truths, because he wasn't going to church and he wasn't really caring. He was just busy in his business. He was doing very well at his business. Anyway, they thought, well, that's interesting, but guess what? They got busy doing their stuff. They got busy selling paint. They got busy helping people with their houses, and they forgot about some of the things they'd learned. But every once in a while, Julia Steed would pull out some of the books that she'd bought and have a little read, and it wasn't until 3 years later that she got baptized and became a Seventh-day Adventist. See, sometimes it takes a few years. Sometimes someone can listen to a program and it takes some years to see what happens. Now, Joseph Steed, he took a few more years again. But guess what? He thought, this is amazing. In the end, he thought, I'm going to get baptized as well. So what do you do when you get baptized? Well, he sold the business, he got himself a bike, and he rode it to Broken Hill. Has anyone ever been to Broken Hill? What's in Broken Hill? Dust and sand. And he rode his bike. Now, some people say he took the train from town to town, and that's good if he did. Other people say he rode the whole way. I don't mind which way he did it. And as he got to each town, he had a bag of books on the back, on the side, Bible readings for the home circle, which was a Corliss book. And he would go and knock on doors, and he would sell books, and he would go to farms, and he would talk to them about Jesus and about prophecy. And at one farm, well, there's stories about he'd knock on the door, and if the farmer wasn't home, if the wife was home, he'd say, well, I don't want to come inside without your husband home. But he would take them out to the driveway, and in the dust with a stick, he would draw the statue out of Daniel 2. Have you ever heard about the statue of Daniel 2? He would draw a big statue and show them all the different kingdoms and show them where we were up to, and people would get excited. And he would start churches. Then he got to Broken Hill, and he lived in a tent. He and Julia lived in a tent, and she had 3 babies living out there. So she had gone from a very comfortable house in Adelaide to living in a tent in Broken Hill, and he was out riding his bike, knocking on doors and selling books. Well, after he went across to Samoa, he went and started Adventist churches in Samoa. Then he came back, and he bought himself a boat. Have we got the boat there, Brad? Oh, we'll have to come back another day and tell you the other bit of the story. We just skipped a bit of story, and that's an exciting bit of story. No, we'll go back there, Brad. Let's go back. I'll talk faster. They were living in Adelaide Hills, and they were running a little Sabbath school there. And a family was coming to the Sabbath school, And one of the families coming to the Sabbath school had a very sick baby, or when I say baby, 3 years old, Amanda? A 3-year-old boy. And Julia Steed says, we have to get this boy to hospital. He's going to die if we don't get him to hospital. But the hospital was a long way away from Scotts Creek where they were living. And there was one train a week, went from Scotts Creek into Adelaide. And she said, we have to get to the train. And so she walked 5 kilometres with the little baby, the little boy, to get to the train. Fortunately, a man with a horse and cart came along, picked up Julia Steed and the boy, and got to the train just in time. And they got the boy into Adelaide and into hospital, and he was okay. His name, if some of you know Adventist history, his name's Walter Scragg. Sorry? You remember him well. Well, there you go. Well, that's Walter Scragg Sr. Walter Scragg Jr., the son of, became the division president here in our division. So that's the baby. So that's the next bit of the story. Then let's go to the boat, Brad. So he decides he's going to buy a boat. He called it the Herald, but it wasn't a steamboat. Guess how this boat got along? You had to pedal it. So this guy who'd spent his life riding bikes is now riding a boat. And he's pedaling his boat along the Murray River, up and down the South Australian part of the river. And each time he got to a town, he would get his bike off the boat and he would ride around town. He would sell books, he would knock on doors, and then he'd get back onto his boat and go to the next one. And a lot of the churches on the lower part of the Murray now started with Mr. Steed coming through their town. In fact, he met a guy called Captain Broderick, who was the captain of the Murrabit, and Captain Broderick, on his big paddle steamer, he became an Adventist, and he thought, this is marvellous, and he gave some land and built the Murray Bridge Church, and if you ever go to Murray Bridge and you see the church, that's how it got there. So, Joseph and Julia Steed did amazing things. They probably wouldn't have guessed that one day at Tasmanian camp we'd be talking about them, because they just did what they felt God wanted them to do. And if you ever go to Avondale College and you're driving into the college and there's a whole lot of graves on the right-hand side, and if you go about 3 rows in and about 4 rows that way, you'll find Joseph and Julia Steed. And when Jesus comes and we get to meet all these people, I'm looking forward to meeting them and just going, that's amazing, guys. Tell me about your boat. But he was excited about telling people about Jesus and telling people about God. He was so excited that he could have stayed in a comfortable painting and decorating business. He could have been very comfortable. Instead, he thought sharing God was more important than being comfortable. And guess what? Some of you are going to grow up to serve God in all kinds of amazing ways. And some of you will serve God as painters, and some of you will serve God as pastors, and some of you will serve God in lots of ways. Can anyone ride a bike? Any of you guys ride a bike? If you can ride a bike, you can serve God. That's what Joseph Steed tells me. You can serve God in whatever you do. You have a wonderful day at camp, and I'll give away some prizes tomorrow. One day at camp. Tomorrow we're going to tell you about, I told you I'm going to tell you about a snake and a cat, but that's going to be tomorrow's story now because we've got to get going with our day. So tomorrow, James, we're going to talk about snakes and cats, and I'm going to tell you another pioneer story. Have a wonderful day. Let me say a prayer for you. Dear Lord, as we come to you today, we just ask for your guidance and blessing. We just thank you that you're a God who's big beyond our imagination, but you also care about small. And we ask that you guide and bless us in how we go about our camp today. Thank you for our leaders at camp, and thank you for all the activities and wonderful things that are happening. Even though it's raining, we'll have a wonderful time with our friends and family and enjoying camp. Guide and bless us today. Amen.